Hi, and welcome to Future Focus, a financial strategies podcast where we make the complex simple. My name is Troy Branch, and I'm joined here today again by my colleague, Keelisha French.
Hello.
And Jacob Messick.
Troy, how's it going?
That's all you got for me?
Well, I can't ask you. It's end of first quarter. How's your 100-a-day going?
End of first quarter? It's not end of first quarter. It's February.
No,
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be end of first quarter.
We're filming in February, so it'll be the end of first quarter.
First quarter in, 100 a day. How you doing?
I'm not up to 100. Well, I'm up to 100 a day, but I'm actually doing like 100 continuous is what I'm trying to do.
All right.
So, and I'm a little behind that. I'm breaking them up into 25s here and there. You might see me in the office sometimes.
100 continuous what?
Push-ups.
Oh, I forgot about the push-up competition.
There's been some days I've probably been a little under, but trying to be consistent.
We don't want to belabor this, but we'll come back to why you're under.
There's a few reasons.
You need to tell folks why you may be a little delayed in your push-up.
My family's probably laughing. It involves a tumble, but
all right. I'm sorry. Okay, so we're on our third business owner episode arc, and this will be our third and final arc of what we've done. In relation to business owners, and we've talked taxes, we've talked valuation, we've talked a little bit about business succession and how we should be considering all those things, right? So we're in our culminating episode as it relates to business owners. So we start at the beginning in entity. Entity creation and sort of what that could potentially yield, and think about it ahead of time. We talked about valuation and key persons and how how that key person can enhance and grow that enterprise value. Today we're going to talk about what does it look like and what should we be thinking about when we're moving the business on to the next generation, and all the and the considerations that are warranted, that we should be thinking about as it relates to moving that business owner. Sometimes it's to the key person, but a lot of times, we know it's moving it on to kids, grandkids, family, whoever it may be. All right.
Yeah.
So we're going to dive in there. Okay. So let's ask the first sort of, and this is generally ends up being a polarizing question. How do business owners balance fairness and control among their potential heirs? You'd probably say it a little easier. Like, hey, I want to give it to my kids. Like, how do I make it equal, equitable? What are business owners considering, or what should they be considering?
So this is definitely a question of estate equalization. We want it to be equitable, which means fair, not necessarily equal. So I have to give this example always because I explained what equitable meant. You didn't actually.
No, but estate equalization,
Let me finish my thought.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I have to give this example because we're in Nebraska always. It's a family farm, right? You usually have multiple kids, and one kid may be involved in the business, one kid may not be involved in the business. But like most small business owners, your family business tends to have a majority of the value of your estate in it. So when it comes to leaving that business to the children, you want to leave it to the child who wants to be involved, who wants to carry on the family business. But that doesn't necessarily mean you don't equally love your other child who isn't so much involved in that business. So what can you do? Well, we try to make it equitable. We try to make it fair, not necessarily equal. So we can institute something like, for example, life insurance, where you take out a policy and you go, okay, I want to replace some of the value that I can't give to that child who isn't a part of the business. That way it's more fair between the two. One person isn't left with absolutely nothing or a very minuscule amount. The other person has the business. It's just they both have the funds, essentially. So I think it's about that equitable consideration, not the equal consideration.
That's a very thorough and complete answer.
Are you making fun of me?
No, that was a complete answer. I'm trying to think of what else to add from an estate equalization standpoint. I think that covered everything pretty good. I think, to me, the only part of it goes into those questions on what's the business owner wanting to do. You mentioned passing it on to their heirs. Well, are their heirs, their children, grandchildren in the business? Are all of them in the business, or only a few of them? So are there, what's the business owner's wishes? Do the kids even want to continue the business? Mm-hmm. Does the business have a buy-sell agreement in place? to help facilitate what's going to happen when they want to exit the business, whether it's at retirement, at death. I mean, what type of planning mechanisms do they have in place for what those wishes may want to be?
Absolutely. And it could also involve, just making sure that you're actually transferring your business during your lifetime. I know this is more of like an estate planning conversation, but when it comes to retaining control of your business, you may want to transfer it over as a gift, but you don't want to pay that estate tax on it right away. So you might want to take advantage of your annual gifting exemptions where you can gift up to like $19,000 per person. So if you give that, though, you can structure it in a way that you actually
2026.
For 2026 that you can actually retain control of the business without giving up control, but still being able to make those transfers and take advantage of those deductions.
Yeah, no, I like it. Good answer.
Go team.
Go team.
I'll just stand here and give the golf clap, right? That's how we talk about it. I mean, it's that.
It is we use equal. I use equal and equitable, and I think our team uses some form of like, I can like, and I think you've said it early on, and I know I've heard you said like the house doesn't split, right? So you got to figure out ways to hey, I love you, like you said, I love you, and this is fair, but this is not equal because you didn't work the business, you did whatever. That's usually the base conversation that business owners when they're thinking about, and it's polarizing because oftentimes if you don't have the conversation ahead of time, if you don't at least breach the subject, right? Talking about being polarizing, then it can be a shock. If and when the business it's time for it to transfer. Whether that's while the business owner is alive, or it's even more. It could be even more of a shock when the business owner passes on, and now someone's reading a will or a trust, and your family is in not ruins, but people are fighting and mad and all all that other stuff.
You got family, you got siblings that aren't in the business, now owners of the business. Maybe you got a spouse of the deceased owner that's now an owner, but does that surviving business partner want to be in business with that individual? So that's where having those conversations early, putting a plan in place, putting a buy-sell agreement in place to know what do I want to have happen to my business as part of a succession continuation plan.
Right, and it doesn't have to be. It's not just the buy-sell agreement for buy-sell agreement's sake. It's you're trying to head off all that other family stuff, at the pass. All right?
Families fight.
Families fight. There we go. We say that all the time. Families fight. Okay. So let's move on. So even in the perfect scenario where family talks ahead of time, ownership is discussed, and there's still other issues that can that can have a tendency to show up. So my next question is, does asset value, right? Does the asset value, and that's one of those problems. Does the asset value translate into income continuity?
So I would say no. And what I mean by that, asset value. No. You have this figure in mind of how much your business is worth, and it's your baby. You may have a little bit of an inflated idea of what it's worth,
yeah.
But essentially, what you think it's worth is usually not what you're going to get for it. And even if you do get it that way, that lump sum dollar, the amount that you get, you may not actually get it as a lump sum dollar amount. You may actually have to get it as a stream of income if there's any financing involved. So all this to say is you may have this number in mind that when you're going to exit, that's what you're going to get. But depending on when you exit and how you exit, that may not actually be the reality.
I would agree too. I mean, my answer to it is no. I mean, kind of that asset value. Okay, that's think of it like your net worth. That's the net worth, what the business is worth. But a lot of times that's illiquid. You don't have that. It's not easily converted to cash and income. So you have to turn this potentially illiquid asset to a cash flow in retirement. It's what we've talked about with our retirement planning conversations. You have to turn things into potentially a stream of income. And so it's that approach. How do I turn this business that I've grown for 10, 20, 30 years into retirement income?
Right. You've got to, kind of what we talked about in episode 2 of this business owner arc. We talked specifically about about the business and what, sort of what it represents income wise and growing it and growing the value and all those other things. Part of this is understanding that retirement number, right? And oftentimes the business is the largest part of that retirement number. But then you've got to go, okay, so it's kicking off this income in some form, right? But now I want to retire. Well, I'm not going to have access to that income. How do I monetize my business, whether it be through buy-sell agreements or somehow moving it on to the next generation? But how do I get my number?
Yeah, because one approach is obviously, hey, I'm continuing to stay the owner. I'm continuing the business in retirement, and it's generating some cash flow, some income for me in retirement. But if they want to, hey, I want to be done and exit the business, how do I turn that in? Because the next buyer, business partner, kids, grandkids, whoever, they may not have all the funds to be able to purchase that as a lump sum.
Mm-hmm.
So how do I get that in retirement as income?
And a lot of this really depends on your ability to exit when you want to exit. You may not be able to exit when you want to exit. You may have to be under a circumstance where you're actually pressured to get out of it. Maybe you have an accident or maybe you pass away and now they're trying to liquidate your business. You're probably not going to get what you thought you were going to get if you don't have a plan in place for that and a way to actually fund it.
And sometimes that exit needs to be sooner to get sort of the best value and see it move on. I heard an example of a story just not long ago. Business owner in their 90s, son, daughter, family in their 70s. Now it's contemplated that they're going to buy it, like the second generation is going to buy from the first generation. But at 70 years old and the first generation is still in the business at 90, like how motivated are you to control and hang on and stick around and sort of grow the business beyond that? So sometimes it's the conversation about getting out while the getting's good and monetizing that, monetizing it while it's at its peak. But that's all part of those discussions.
Yeah, those questions. What do I want? What are my goals?
What are my goals?
What do I want to accomplish? And whether it's from retirement planning or what I want to happen to my business, or it's just all intertwined on what do I want to, what are my goals?
Right.
Yep.
All right. So let's move to the final question of the arc of the entire business owner arc. So we're going to talk about like exiting and sort of life and alignment and all those other things, kind of what we kind of hinted on. And here's the question: are business goals aligned with personal and family goals? We kind of touched on this just at the end of question 2. So what are you guys' thoughts?
Final question of our trilogy, and it ends with a maybe. Because I guess my answer is maybe. I mean, I guess it depends on what that business's goals are outside the business, from both, that personal and financial goal standpoint. What are they trying to accomplish outside of their business? They could be aligned, but they could also not be aligned. I guess it's a big old depends.
I think this is definitely more of like a legacy planning question than an estate planning question. Like, you always hammer that home in all of the conversations we have outside of the podcast of, you can have the conversation about estate planning, you can have your documents in order, you can do all the planning part of it. But if you don't have those legacy conversations with your family to actually bring them in on the estate plan and what you want to do and kind of your vision for this, it's all for naught because they're kind of in the dark. Right. So it's making sure that you're communicating what you want to happen. You're making sure that your family's heard and what they think should happen and how they want to continue on that business. It's just making sure you have that open line of communication. Yeah, because
I know I've been on the end of a conversation. I was like, I didn't know you thought that. In fact, 20 something years and I didn't know you thought that way. I didn't realize that should be a consideration. Like I think you'll find business owners will have more of that revelation. And maybe it's not like, I don't want to be in the business or I wish you'd have loved me more. I'm not saying that, but
that's a tough conversation.
Yeah, exactly. But you do get the opportunity, or you can create the opportunity to be able to go, here's why I did what I did, or I do what I do. Here's what I would like above all else, I'd love to see these aspects of our family, of our values, of our business to continue on.
Well, I think when you mention those personal and family goals, kind of saying it together, you think, hey, those are the same. Well, no, those cannot be. I mean, if you're thinking from a business owner, you kind of have three things. And, if we had a little bit bigger of a budget and some CGI, I'd snap my fingers and we'd show something on the screen that shows business goals, personal goals, family goals, three things that are separate. They're still intertwined,
Right.
but they're separate things that, the person probably wants to think about and consider.
Yeah.
I mean, for example, as a business owner, you want to maximize the money that you get for your business, but maybe that's not in the best interest of your family who's purchasing the business from you. Maybe you want to give them a deal or take advantage of what are called valuation discounts, which I will not get into here.
Oh,
That's too
no,
much.
no.
Nope.
No,
I
come on
fight
now.
this one.
Come on, valuation
fight-
discounts?
I fight this
So
one.
you're going to tell me,
No, because you're
votes.
always going to outvote me.
table vote.
Table vote.
All in favor of valuation discounts being a pebble? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Ayes have it.
2 to
Put it in.
1.
Rude. But that's for a different conversation. I won't go into that here. But it's taking advantage of that, in my opinion.
Probably should have saved it for that one.
I should have saved it for that one because y'all are mean.
But that is a good point. Hey, I want to maximize the business. It's almost like 3 tiers where, you maximize the business, those family goals might decrease down. So how do I, it's back to the state equalization. How do I keep things fair and equitable between what I want to accomplish, business, family, personal? And it's just, knowing that if I do something more here, maybe it's going to impact this.
And like this is on the third, this is our third episode in this business owner arc. I think that sort of that interplay between the three things, personal, family, and business, I think those the value of those or the importance of those sort of ebb and flow depending on the life cycle of the business.
Like how I got you using our hands for our
Yeah.
listeners to watch us.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's on YouTube. You can watch if you want to see it.
There you go. This will not make for a good audio only podcast. This part, like, hey, you can see my hands, right? We should describe it. So,
Yeah.
All right. Anything else?
No,
Good?
I think that's good for that one.
So that sort of takes us to the end. Did you? I don't know how much time we have, but did you?
We probably got some time. I don't know. I think we might. Let's probably set a record for a shortness
I
on
think
this
this one was
so
pretty short.
I
Okay.
think. Yeah. I think.
Where's your detour, Jacob?
No.
Yeah, where's the detour, Jacob?
You don't got anything prepared.
I mean, we.
Even if I say, man, this is our third episode. Dare I say a trilogy?
Well, I mean, we could.
no.
We could talk about, from a trilogy standpoint, how most times it's hard to find a movie as part of a trilogy that third movie is the best of the three. But we would clearly go way over time if we start diving into our movie trilogies.
You mean like we did
For
for
context,
20 minutes earlier this morning?
We did that for literally at least 20, 30 minutes already.
I guess you did have one that you liked the third better than the first two, but
What was that? We're
I'm
fighting
sure
over
it's going to be
Batman.
controversial though, because it was two. It was I personally thought The Dark Knight Rises was I liked that. I mean, Batman was good. It set the stage. I know
you got
people
Batman
like
Begins. You got to give it the right full title.
Excuse me, Batman Begins was good. I wasn't that big a fan of the second part of the Nolan trilogy. I know some people are falling off their chairs, but it is what it is. Fight me on it.
See,
But I love Dark Knight Rises. Like I love Bane. Like that's
Bane is
like
a superior
top three
character.
villains of all time.
maybe Tom Hardy listens to this. So,
yeah.
Hopefully.
There we go.
Hi,
But-
Tom.
but yeah. But yeah, so that's going to take us way over time if we try to figure out what trilogy we like number 3 the best. So we'll
Put it in the comments below.
Yeah, there you go. Put it in the comments below. By the way, I also said Revenge of the Sith of the second prequels of Star Wars. But that's again, fight me on it.
Okay.
All right, let's get out of here. So now back to actually real stuff. Real stuff as it relates to Future Focus. I want to thank everyone. I appreciate the sitting in and tuning in to this business owner arc. We covered a lot of different ground. Maybe not the way that we typically do it, but we still covered quite a bit of ground as it relates to business owners. And hopefully, if you're a business owner out there, one, I know I need to do this because it's someone like I can see them in the background. Like, make sure you what we talked about over this entire arc, but certainly here, here today, and, specifically is general advice. It's something that we always say, but it's sort of general educational sort of advice. It's not intended to be a specific recommendation, but certainly things, we talked about some things that if you're out there and you happen to tune in, I mean, I ought to be thinking about, maybe I should be thinking about, or maybe you had this sort of gnawing thing in the back of your mind, and that's what it was. It's this idea of legacy and passing the business on, and personal goals and family goals and business goals, and so if we've made you consider, or at least identified maybe that nagging thought you had in your mind, great. That's part of what Future Focus does. And that's why we have these discussions and talk about these things and and even do a business owner arc. So hopefully that was helpful for you, whether it's personal, business, family goals, whether it's valuation, understanding valuation and the interplay of having a key person has on valuation, whether it's choosing the right business or the right business entity to be tax efficient. All the things that we've talked about. Hopefully you found something helpful in this in this business owner arc. So what I'm going to do is remind you, as always, to like and subscribe. There's the comments down below, and please make sure you submit your comments. This is episode, was this 24?
24. That's right.
Listener episode's
Before you
next.
go to the outro, yes, listener episode is the next one.
Yes.
So get ready for some more questions
Yep.
we're gonna hit.
Please comment questions.
Yep.
We want your questions.
We want your questions. We enjoy the questions, and fun. And actually, the listener episode is one of the more fun. It's one of the more fun things we do, because there isn't a whole lot of writing. We go, here's the question, how are we going to answer it, right? And that's the beauty of the list. That's the beauty of the listener episode. So again, put your comments down below, like and subscribe, and thank you. This is Future Focus. You have a great rest of your day.